The emergency lights flashed red across the medical bay of Forward Station Kepler 7. Dr. Velthar's forearms moved quickly over the control panel, his insectoid eyes scanning the incoming data. Behind him, Nurse Rixal checked the equipment for the third time, her reptilian scales shifting colors with nervous energy. Human casualties incoming, the computer announced in a flat voice. Estimated arrival, 4 minutes. Velthar felt his chest tighten. Humans, the newest members of the Galactic Coalition, the species that had appeared 5 years ago, and immediately threw themselves into every dangerous situation they could find. The species that made the warrior Krell look cautious by comparison. Pull up the human medical files, Velthar ordered. The holographic display filled with anatomical diagrams. He studied them with growing concern. Humans had no exoskeleton, no armored plates, no redundant organs. Their skin was thin and easily damaged. Most of their critical systems were positioned in completely exposed areas. How did this species survive evolution? Rixal asked, staring at the diagrams. They have almost no natural defenses. The database says they are persistence hunters, Technician Korvex replied, his mechanical voice crackling from the equipment station. They chased prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. That explains nothing about combat capability, Rixal muttered. Dr. Thelnora entered the medical bay, her crystalline form glowing softly. As the station's psychiatrist and empath, she could sense emotions and pain from a distance. I can already feel something, she said quietly. Pain, significant pain, but also something else. Determination, stubbornness. I cannot identify it clearly. The medical team assembled near the landing bay doors. Commander Zethrin, the massive Krell warrior, stood with them. His armored bulk made even the spacious medical bay feel cramped. First time treating humans in combat conditions? He asked. Yes, Velthar admitted. We have limited data on their trauma response. Zethrin made a sound that might have been a laugh. You will see something interesting today, Doctor. Humans do not respond to trauma like other species. Before Velthar could ask what that meant, the landing bay doors opened. The dropship settled onto the platform with a hiss of hydraulics. The medical team rushed forward, stretchers ready. They expected to find dying soldiers, maybe soldiers already in stasis chambers. Instead, they found a human standing at the dropship door, one hand pressed against the wall for support. His combat uniform was soaked dark with blood. More blood dripped onto the metal floor. I can walk, the human said to another human in medical gear. Save the stretcher for someone who needs it. Corporal Kim, get on the damn stretcher, the human medic said firmly. She wore lieutenant insignia. That is an order. Velthar activated his medical scanner, pointing it at the human called Kim. The readout made his hands freeze. 3 broken ribs, punctured lung, fractured femur, multiple lacerations, internal bleeding, shrapnel embedded in abdomen and shoulder. These injuries should have rendered the human unconscious from shock. These injuries should have killed him already. The human was standing, talking, arguing about a stretcher. Your scanner is broken, Kim said, noticing Velthar's stare. It looks worse than it is. Then he stumbled and the human medic caught him. On the stretcher, Corporal. Now. Kim finally obeyed, lowering himself onto the stretcher with obvious effort. Did someone grab my rifle? We cannot leave Coalition equipment on the battlefield. Regulations, right? Velthar and his team rushed the stretcher into the medical bay. Rixal immediately began setting up the surgical equipment. Korvex ran another diagnostic scan and checked the results 3 times. The scanner is functioning correctly, Korvex announced. But these readings are impossible. The human should be unconscious. The human should be dying. The human medic entered the bay behind them. Lieutenant Hana Choi, she introduced herself. Human medical liaison. You have about 20 minutes before he crashes. He is running on adrenaline right now. 20 minutes? Velthar repeated. That is impossible with these injuries. Welcome to human biology, Hana said calmly. We are full of surprises. Velthar began emergency surgery prep. We will need to use full anesthesia. These injuries require extensive repair. No, Kim said from the table. Local anesthesia only. I want to stay awake. All 4 of Velthar's hands stopped moving. That is not possible. The pain would be too severe. I can handle it, Kim insisted. You might need to ask me questions about human anatomy during surgery. Better if I am conscious. Velthar looked at Hana. She nodded. If he says he can handle it, he probably can. Humans have high pain tolerance. Dr. Thelnora made a distressed sound. Her crystalline form flickered. I can feel his pain. It is immense. How is he conscious? How is he speaking normally? Training, Kim said with a weak smile. And stubbornness. We humans are very stubborn. Velthar proceeded with the surgery, administering local anesthesia only. His hands worked quickly, repairing the damage piece by piece. The punctured lung, the broken ribs, the internal bleeding. Throughout the entire procedure, Kim remained conscious. He answered questions when asked. He even commented on the surgical techniques. That crystalline welder is interesting, Kim observed as Velthar sealed a blood vessel. We use plasma torches in field medicine. Not as precise, but faster. Rixal stood beside Thelnora, watching the monitors. His pain levels are extreme, Rixal whispered. But his heart rate is almost normal. His brain activity shows he is aware and alert. This should not be possible. It is not supposed to be possible, Thelnora agreed, her voice shaking. Not for any species I have studied. Halfway through the surgery, Kim spoke again. Dr. Velthar, how long is recovery time for these injuries? Minimum 3 weeks, Velthar replied, focused on removing shrapnel from Kim's abdomen. Possibly longer. 3 weeks, Kim repeated. Will I be cleared for duty in time for the next offensive? That is scheduled for 6 weeks from now. The medical bay went silent except for the sound of equipment. Velthar stopped working for a moment. You nearly died today. You are asking about returning to combat? My squad needs me, Kim said simply. They are still out there. From the observation gallery above, Commander Zethran's laugh echoed through the bay. I told you, Doctor. Humans are different. They are absolutely insane. And I love it. 2 hours later, Velthar finished the final suture. Kim's injuries were repaired. The human would live. He would even make a full recovery, though Velthar still could not quite believe it. Thank you, Doctor, Kim said as the medical team cleaned up. You do good work. All of you. He looked at each of them. Is there a communication system? I need to message my squad. Let them know I am okay. Rixal stared at him. You nearly died. Yeah, Kim agreed. But I did not die. That is what matters, right? Before anyone could respond, the emergency alarm sounded again. Another human casualty incoming. The medical team looked at each other. How bad? Velthar asked the computer. Critical condition. Multiple system failures. Severe trauma. Estimated survival probability, less than 5%. Hana headed for the landing bay. That means he has a chance, she said over her shoulder. Never count out a human, Doctor. We are full of surprises. Velthar looked down at Kim, who was already trying to sit up despite being told to rest. Then he looked at his team. Rixal's scales had shifted to a confused purple. Thelnora still flickered with distress. Corvex was running diagnostics on equipment that was functioning perfectly. They had just witnessed something that should not be possible. A human surviving injuries that would kill any other species. A human remaining conscious and conversational through extreme pain. A human already thinking about returning to combat. And according to the alarm, another human was about to show them the same impossible resilience. Velthar headed for the landing bay. Whatever humans were, they were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, and he was beginning to understand why Commander Zethran found them both terrifying and inspiring. The doors opened, the next human arrived, and the medical team prepared to witness the impossible all over again. The conference room lights dimmed as Dr. Velthar started the holographic replay. His team sat around the table, watching the surgery from 3 hours ago. On the screen, Corporal Kim lay on the operating table conscious and talking while Velthar repaired his shattered ribs. We need to understand this, Velthar said, pausing the replay. How did he remain conscious with a punctured lung and internal bleeding? How did he function normally? Dr. Thelnora projected her findings onto the holographic display. Charts and graphs filled the air. I have analyzed human brain chemistry during the surgery. Humans produce several natural chemicals that manage pain and stress. Adrenaline increases their physical capability. Endorphins reduce pain sensation, and their psychological conditioning allows them to maintain focus despite extreme discomfort. But they still feel the pain? Rixal asked. Yes, Thelnora confirmed, her crystalline form flickering. That is what disturbs me most. They feel everything. The pain levels I sensed from Corporal Kim were extreme, but he simply chose to function despite it. I have never encountered a species with such conscious control over their trauma response. The emergency alarm interrupted the meeting. All eyes turned to the ceiling speakers. Medical emergency. Human casualty incoming. Critical condition. Severe burns and traumatic amputation. The team rushed to the landing bay. This time they knew what to expect. Or they thought they did. The dropship doors opened. Lieutenant Hana stepped out first, carrying a small cooler. Behind her, 2 soldiers helped a third human walk down the ramp. The injured human's left arm ended at the elbow, wrapped in emergency bandages. His uniform was burned and melted in places. His face was covered in soot and minor burns. Private Jae-sung Park, Hana announced. Combat engineer. 3rd-degree burns covering 40% of his body. Traumatic amputation of left forearm. Lost the arm 3 hours ago in an explosion. Velthar activated his scanner. The readings confirmed Hana's assessment. These injuries were severe, fatal for many species. Yet the human was walking and conscious. Did they set the charges correctly? Jae-sung asked his fellow soldiers. Did the bridge blow up? It blew up perfectly, one soldier assured him. Stopped the enemy advance for 6 hours. You did good, Park. Jae-sung nodded, satisfied. Then he looked at the medical team. Hello, doctors. Sorry about this mess. The mission got a bit complicated. Rixal guided him to a medical bed. A bit complicated? You lost your arm. Yeah, that was unfortunate, Jae-sung agreed. Is it too late to reattach it? He looked at Hana, who held up the cooler. You brought it, right? We brought it, Hana confirmed. She handed the cooler to Velthar. The arm was severed cleanly by shrapnel. If you work quickly, reattachment might be possible. Velthar took the cooler, his hands trembling slightly. Not from the weight, but from the casual way these humans discussed a severed limb, as if it were a broken tool that needed repair. We will do our best, Velthar said. But even if we successfully reattach it, nerve regeneration will take months. Full function is not guaranteed. That is fine, Jae-sung said. Worst case, I get a prosthetic, right? I have seen what technician Korvex can build. Maybe an upgrade. He grinned, despite the obvious pain he was in. Korvex made a sound like static. You want a combat prosthetic? If possible, yes. Something with built-in tools would be useful. Maybe a plasma cutter? Or a grappling attachment? The medical team exchanged looks. This human had lost his arm hours ago. He was covered in severe burns. And he was planning equipment upgrades. Local anesthesia again? Velthar asked, already knowing the answer. If you do not mind, Jae-sung said. I want to watch. Nerve reattachment is fascinating. We do not have the technology for this in field hospitals. The surgery took 4 hours. Velthar worked with extreme precision, connecting blood vessels, muscles, tendons, and nerves. Throughout the entire procedure, Jae-sung remained awake and alert. He asked questions. He made observations. He even offered suggestions based on his engineering knowledge. That crystalline welder you use for cauterization, Jae-sung said at one point. It operates on focused light energy, correct? Very efficient. We use plasma torches in the field. Less precise but faster. Different tools for different situations. Rixal monitored Jae-sung's vitals throughout the surgery. His pain levels remained extremely high, but his brain activity stayed focused and calm. It was the same pattern they had seen with Corporal Kim. Humans felt pain normally, but their response to pain was abnormal. Finally, Velthar completed the final nerve connection. The reattachment is successful. But remember, nerve regeneration is slow. It will be many months before you regain significant function. Many months, Jae-sung repeated. So about 6 months? Maybe 8? 8 to 12 months, Velthar corrected. Possibly longer. I will work hard on rehabilitation, Jae-sung promised. Maybe I can speed up the process. They moved Jae-sung to the recovery ward. Corporal Kim was already there, sitting up in bed despite being told to rest. When he saw Jae-sung, he waved. Hey, Park. Heard you lost an arm. That is rough. Yeah, but they reattached it. Jae-sung replied as nurses helped him into the bed next to Kim. Might get full function back. Or I get a cool prosthetic. Either way, not too bad. Prosthetic would be nice, Kim agreed. Built-in tools and everything? That is what I said. Maybe a plasma cutter or a grappling hook. The two humans began comparing their injuries like people comparing sports scores. Kim described his punctured lung and broken ribs. Jae-sung described the explosion that took his arm. They laughed about close calls and made jokes about their current condition. Rixall observed this interaction from the nurse's station. She turned to Velthar. They are treating catastrophic trauma like a competition, like a game. I do not understand it either, Velthar admitted. Lieutenant Choi, can you explain this behavior? Hana had been reviewing medical charts at a nearby terminal. She looked up. You want to understand human psychology? Yes, Velthar said. We need to understand how humans process trauma, how they maintain function, how they remain positive despite severe injuries. Hana gestured for them to follow her to a private office. Once inside, she pulled up human historical and biological data on the display. Humans evolved on a very dangerous planet, Hana began. We had no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. We survived through endurance and stubbornness. Our ancestors were persistence hunters. They chased prey for hours, sometimes days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. The display showed ancient humans running across vast plains, following animal tracks. We developed the ability to endure pain, hunger, thirst, and exhaustion. We learned to keep going when every instinct said to stop. This trait is built into our biology and culture. We do not shut down when injured, we adapt. We find ways to continue. Velthar studied the historical data. So this is normal for humans? This level of resilience? This is normal for soldiers, Hana corrected. We train for years to enhance these natural abilities. We learn to manage pain, control fear, and maintain focus under extreme stress. The joking you see between Kim and Park? That is a coping mechanism. Humor helps us process trauma and maintain morale. It seems reckless, Rixall observed. It probably does, Hana agreed. But it keeps us alive. A soldier who gives up dies. A soldier who keeps fighting has a chance. We evolved to be the species that always has a chance. Commander Zethrin entered the office, having to duck through the doorway. I have been reviewing combat reports from the front lines. Human units are taking casualties, but their effectiveness remains extremely high. Even wounded humans continue fighting until forced to evacuate. He looked at Velthar. I have fought alongside Krell berserkers. When they enter blood frenzy, they feel no pain and fight with incredible ferocity. But the frenzy is temporary and uncontrolled. These humans are different. They feel everything. They think clearly. They make tactical decisions. And they keep fighting anyway. Is that admiration I hear, Commander? Hana asked with a slight smile. It is, Zethrin admitted. And a little bit of fear. I am glad humans are on our side. Later that evening, Dr. Thel Nora approached Velthar in his office. Her crystalline form pulsed with an unusual pattern. I have been monitoring human brain activity, she said quietly. They have conscious control over functions that most species manage only automatically. They can force their bodies to continue through willpower alone. They can override survival instincts through determination. She paused, her light flickering. Dr. Velthar, I need to ask a difficult question. What happens if we are ever on the opposite side of a conflict with humans? What happens when this resilience is turned against us? Velthar looked through the window at the recovery ward. Kim and Jae-sung were still talking, still laughing, still planning their return to duty. Neither showed any sign of being discouraged by their injuries. I do not know, Velthar admitted, but I hope we never find out. 3 days had passed since the first human casualties arrived. The medical station had changed. New protocols covered the walls. Equipment had been recalibrated for human physiology. The staff moved with more confidence now, though they still found human resilience shocking. Dr. Velthar stood before a group of newly arrived medical personnel, using holographic displays to explain human treatment procedures. The new staff listened with expressions of disbelief. Human pain tolerance exceeds any other known species, Velthar explained. They will underreport injury severity. Always scan them fully regardless of their self-assessment. A young Velthani doctor raised one of her 4 hands. But surely they cannot function with severe injuries. The medical reports seem exaggerated. Velthar pulled up surgery recordings from Corporal Kim's treatment. Watch. This human remained conscious during emergency surgery for a punctured lung. He conversed normally. He asked about returning to duty. The new staff watched in silence. Several made sounds of distress. Before Velthar could continue, the emergency alarm blared through the station. Priority 1 alert. Mass casualty event. Human unit ambushed. Multiple critical injuries. 8 casualties incoming. Estimated arrival time 6 minutes. The medical bay transformed into controlled chaos. Staff rushed to prepare multiple operating stations. Equipment was activated. Emergency supplies were staged. The new medical personnel looked nervous. 8 critical casualties at once was a severe situation. Mass casualty protocols, Velthar ordered. Prepare for immediate triage. Most severe injuries get priority. The dropship arrived right on schedule. The doors opened. The medical team expected to see soldiers on stretchers, possibly in stasis chambers. Instead, 3 humans walked off the ship under their own power. 2 more were being helped by their squad mates. Only 3 were on stretchers, and even they were conscious and talking. Velthar activated his scanner and began checking the walking wounded. One had a compound fracture of the left arm and partial hearing loss from an explosion. Another had severe lacerations across the chest and abdomen. The third had a concussion and multiple broken fingers. These are your critical casualties? One of the new doctors asked in confusion. Yes, Lieutenant Hana confirmed. The critical one is coming now. A human female soldier walked into the medical bay, one hand pressed firmly against her chest. Blood seeped between her fingers. Her breathing made a horrible sucking sound. She looked around the room with sharp, alert eyes. Sergeant Bo-Young Lee, Hana announced. Squad leader. Sucking chest wound from projectile fire. Punctured lung, possibly damaged heart tissue. Bo-Young ignored the medical staff and focused on Hana. Status report. Where is the rest of my squad? All accounted for, Hana assured her. 3 wounded besides you. Everyone else made it back to base safely. Bo-Young nodded. Good. Then she swayed slightly and Rixel rushed to steady her. Sergeant, you need immediate surgery, Velthar said. Please lie down. In a moment, Bo-Young replied. I need to debrief first. The ambush was well planned. The enemy knew our route. Someone needs to investigate possible intelligence leaks. Commander Zethrin entered the medical bay, his massive armored form making the space feel smaller. Sergeant Lee, your tactical report can wait. Accept treatment. That is an order. Bo-Young straightened despite her obvious pain. Yes, Commander. She finally allowed the medical team to guide her to an operating table. During surgery, Bo-Young refused general anesthesia. Local anesthesia only. She wanted to remain conscious. Velthar had stopped arguing about this with humans. It seemed to be standard practice for them. While Velthar repaired the damage to her lung and chest, Bo-Young requested tactical updates. Hana stood beside the operating table, providing information from a datapad. The enemy force that ambushed us has retreated, Hana reported. Our forces are pursuing them now. How many enemy casualties? Bo-Young asked. Estimated 15 to 20. Your squad held off a force 3 times your size for 40 minutes. You bought enough time for civilian evacuations to complete. Mission success. Bo-Young smiled despite the breathing tube and surgical equipment. Good. My squad did well. The new medical staff watched this exchange with expressions of shock. One of them approached Rixal. Is this normal? She is processing battlefield intelligence during surgery? For humans, yes, Rixal confirmed. They are all like this. Every single one. In the recovery ward, the wounded human squad began to reunite. Despite various injuries, they were in high spirits. They had successfully defended their position against superior numbers. They had protected civilians. They had completed their mission. Someone produced a deck of cards. Within minutes, a game was underway. Soldiers with broken bones, lacerations, and concussions sat together, playing cards and sharing rations. They laughed. They told stories about the battle. They planned modifications to their tactics for next time. Dr. Thelnora observed from a distance. Her empathic senses were overwhelmed. She could feel their pain, their exhaustion, their lingering fear from combat. But she also felt their pride, their relief that everyone survived, and their unshakable determination to continue fighting. How do they do it? She whispered to Velthar. How do they maintain such positive emotions while in such pain?
I am beginning to understand, Velthar replied.
They separate physical suffering from emotional state. The pain is present, but it does not control them. They choose how to respond to it. Later, Velthar found Lieutenant Hana in the observation room. She was reviewing the medical scans and treatment records. "Lieutenant, I need to ask you something. How do you train soldiers to endure what we have witnessed? How do you teach this level of resilience?" Hana considered the question carefully. "Basic military training pushes people to their physical and mental limits. We learn to function while exhausted, injured, and afraid. But what you are seeing is not just training. It is culture. It is biology. It is thousands of generations of humans surviving impossible odds by refusing to give up." She gestured to the recovery ward, where the humans were still playing cards. "We survived ice ages. We survived predators that were bigger, faster, and stronger than us. We survived diseases that killed millions. We survived wars that destroyed entire civilizations. We survived because we never stopped trying. That trait is built into every human at a fundamental level. We are persistence incarnate," Hana continued. "We do not have natural weapons. We do not have armor. We do not have superior strength or speed. What we have is the ability to keep going when every rational instinct says to stop. That is what makes us dangerous. That is what makes us valuable allies." Velthar processed this information. It explained so much. The jokes during surgery, the casual attitude toward severe injuries, the immediate planning for return to duty. Humans were not reckless or in denial. They were simply being human. Technician Korvax entered the observation room carrying a data pad. "Dr. Velthar, I have completed the revised medical protocols for human treatment. I included warnings about their tendency to underreport injuries. I also noted that their recovery rates exceed our initial projections by 30 to 40%. 40%? Velthar repeated. "Yes. Corporal Kim and Private Jae-sung are both healing faster than expected. Kim's broken ribs are already showing significant bone regeneration. Jae-sung's reattached arm is responding well to nerve therapy. If these trends continue, both will be cleared for light duty within 2 weeks instead of 3. Commander Zethrin joined them, having to squeeze through the doorway. "I have received new orders from Coalition Command. They want my recommendation on whether to expand human combat units and integrate them more deeply into Coalition forces." He looked at Velthar. "What is your medical opinion? Can humans sustain this level of combat intensity? Can they maintain unit effectiveness while taking these kinds of casualties?" Velthar looked through the window at the recovery ward. The humans were still playing cards, still laughing, still planning their return to duty. Despite catastrophic injuries, they were unbroken. Despite overwhelming odds in combat, they had succeeded. "Commander, I do not think you understand. They are not pushing themselves to their limits. This is normal for them. This is simply how humans operate. My medical opinion is that humans are the most combat-effective species I have ever encountered. And it is not because of their technology or tactics. It is because they refuse to accept defeat." The emergency alarm sounded again. More human casualties incoming from a forward assault. Velthar sighed and headed for the landing bay. Rixal fell into step beside him. "It is always more humans," she observed. "Yes," Velthar agreed. "And they will keep coming. They will keep fighting. They will keep surviving. Because that is what humans do." 2 weeks had passed. The medical station had become a second home to human casualties. The staff no longer gasped when wounded humans arrived conscious and talking. They no longer questioned when humans refused general anesthesia. They had adapted to human resilience because they had no other choice. Dr. Velthar prepared for a holo conference with the Coalition Medical Council. He had been asked to present his findings on human physiology and combat medicine. The request had come directly from Coalition Command, which meant important decisions would follow his report. The holographic projectors activated, filling his office with the images of council members from across the galaxy. Velthani like himself, Rixathi reptilians, crystalline luminara, even a Krell military representative. "Dr. Velthar," the council chair began, "you have had 2 weeks of direct experience treating human combat casualties. We need your assessment. Are the reports accurate? Do humans truly possess extraordinary resilience?" Velthar activated his presentation. Charts and medical scans filled the holographic space. "The reports are accurate. In fact, they underestimate human capability. I have documented numerous cases of humans functioning with injuries that would incapacitate or kill other species. They possess redundant psychological override systems, exceptional pain tolerance, rapid soft tissue healing, and cultural conditioning that prioritizes mission completion over personal safety. A Velthani council member raised an objection. You are claiming that humans regularly survive injuries that would kill trained Krell warriors? This seems biologically implausible. Velthar transmitted surgery recordings. The council watched in silence as Corporal Kim remained conscious through emergency surgery. They saw Private Jae Sung discussing prosthetic upgrades while his severed arm was being reattached. They witnessed Sergeant Bo Young processing tactical intelligence during life-saving surgery. The objections stopped. Several council members made sounds of distress or disbelief. How is this possible? Someone asked. Dr. Thelnora joined the holoconference, her crystalline form glowing softly. I can provide the psychiatric perspective. Humans experience trauma and pain normally. Their neural responses are not significantly different from other species in terms of pain reception. However, their psychological processing is unique. She displayed brain scan comparisons. Humans have conscious control over functions that most species manage only automatically. They can override survival instincts through determination and willpower. They process traumatic events through social bonding, humor, and cognitive reframing. What we would classify as catastrophic psychological damage, humans call a bad day. She paused, her light flickering. However, I must add a warning. Human resilience has limits. They can break. It simply takes more stress than we initially believed possible. Extended trauma without recovery time will eventually overwhelm even human psychological defenses. We have documented one such case, Velthar added. He displayed the file of Private Donghyun Nam, a human medic who had treated dozens of casualties under fire during a 72-hour siege. Immediately after the last patient was evacuated, Donghyun collapsed from complete physical and mental exhaustion. He has been in our recovery ward for 3 days, sleeping almost continuously. When he woke briefly, his first words were to ask if everyone made it. Even in complete exhaustion, the mission came first. The council discussed the findings for several minutes. Finally, the chair spoke again. Your recommendation, Dr. Velthar. Full integration of human combat units into coalition forces. However, human medical support protocols must be implemented wherever humans serve. Their injury assessment is unreliable. They will always underreport severity. Medical staff must be trained to recognize this tendency. The holoconference ended. Velthar sat back, suddenly feeling exhausted. Commander Zethrin entered his office moments later. I watched your presentation, the Krell said. Well done, but now I want you to see something. Come with me. They took a transport to the human training facility 3 levels below the medical bay. Velthar had never visited this area before. The sounds of combat training echoed through the corridors, shouted orders, the impact of bodies hitting padded mats, the discharge of training weapons. They entered an observation room overlooking a large training space. Below, human soldiers practiced tactical scenarios. Velthar watched as they moved through simulated combat situations that included injury responses. The training was brutal by any species standards. Soldiers carried wounded squad mates while under simulated fire. They performed medical procedures while exhausted and stressed. They maintained communication and tactical awareness while dealing with simulated injuries. Sergeant Bo Young Lee supervised the training. She had been released from medical care just yesterday, cleared for light duty. She moved among the trainees, correcting techniques and offering encouragement. Her chest wound was barely healed, yet here she was, back to work. Velthar activated the communication system. Sergeant Lee, may I ask you a question? Bo Young looked up at the observation window. Of course, Doctor. What do you need? Why train like this? This level of stress seems excessive. Bo Young smiled. Because the real thing is worse, Doctor. We train until we do not have to think. We train until our responses are automatic. When you are in actual combat, injured and exhausted, you cannot rely on conscious decision-making. You rely on training. You rely on muscle memory. You rely on your squad. She gestured to the trainees. These soldiers are learning to function under the worst possible conditions. When they face real combat, they will be prepared. They will not freeze. They will not panic. They will do what needs to be done. Velthar watched for another hour, beginning to understand human military culture at a deeper level. Everything was about preparation, about pushing limits, about building resilience through constant challenge. Back in the medical bay, Nurse Rixal approached Velthar with a troubling report. Doctor, several non-human soldiers have requested transfers to human units. When I asked why, they cited the human refusal to leave casualties behind and their high mission success rates. Humans are inspiring other species, Velthar observed, or corrupting them depending on your perspective. I'm not sure which is more concerning, Rixal admitted. That evening, the medical staff gathered in the common area. Technician Korvex had been unusually quiet all day, processing information in his collective consciousness way. Finally, he spoke. I do not understand human individualism combined with fierce loyalty. Each human is autonomous. They make individual decisions, but they act as a unified force. They share collective purpose. This seems contradictory. Lieutenant Hanna, who had joined them for dinner, laughed. Welcome to humanity, Korvex. We are walking contradictions. We are individuals who need community. We are independent thinkers who follow orders. We are peaceful people who excel at war. We contain multitudes, as one of our old poets said. How does your species function with such internal contradictions? Korvex asked, genuinely curious. Imperfectly, Hanna admitted. We argue, we disagree. We struggle with these contradictions constantly. But maybe that is our strength. We are not programmed. We are not bound by rigid instincts. We adapt. We change. We find ways to make contradictions work together. Later that night, Velthar received a priority message from his homeworld. His research had gained significant attention. There was concern at the highest levels of Veltani government. The message read, If humans possess this level of resilience and combat effectiveness, what happens when the war ends? What happens if humans turn their attention to conquest rather than defense? What happens if they become our enemies rather than our allies? Velthar stared at the message for a long time. It was a valid concern, a terrifying concern. He forwarded the message to Lieutenant Hanna, asking for her perspective. Her response arrived within minutes. We fight for what we believe in. Right now, we believe in the coalition. We believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. We believe in defending against threats to civilization. These beliefs drive us, they motivate us. They give meaning to our sacrifices. Do not give us reason to believe in something else. Do not give us reason to see the coalition as a threat rather than an ally. As long as we fight together, we will be your strongest defenders. But if you betray that trust, you will discover why humans survived every threat our own planet threw at us. The message was not a threat. It was simply the truth. Velthar understood that now. Human resilience could be humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy or its greatest danger. The choice belonged to the galaxy itself. A new message arrived from Coalition Command. A major offensive was being planned against the enemy homeworld. A desperate assault designed to end the war quickly. The human military requested that Dr. Velthar and his team be embedded with the assault force to provide frontline medical support. Velthar looked at the request. His staff would object. It was dangerous. It went far beyond normal medical duty. But if he wanted to truly understand humans, he needed to see them in their most extreme conditions. He needed to see them at their absolute worst and their absolute best. He accepted the assignment. Forward Operating Base Atlas sat 20 kilometers from the enemy homeworld defensive perimeter. The base was temporary, hastily constructed, and constantly under threat. Dr. Velthar had never been this close to active combat before. The sound of distant artillery was constant. The ground shook periodically from explosions. The medical team had deployed with the assault force 2 days ago. They had set up a field hospital and reinforced structures. The equipment was portable but functional. Everything was designed for rapid treatment and evacuation. Rixal checked medical supplies for the third time. Her scales had shifted to an anxious gray color. I still think this was a mistake. We are medical personnel, not combat troops. The humans requested us specifically, Velthar reminded her. They trust us to treat their wounded. That trust is important. Dr. Thelnora stood near the entrance, her crystalline form flickering rapidly. She could sense the emotions from the soldiers preparing for battle. Fear, determination, hope, resignation. The mixture was overwhelming. The assault begins at dawn, Lieutenant Hana announced, entering the medical facility. Casualty projections are between 40 and 60%. This will be the most intense combat of the war. 60% casualties, Technician Korvex repeated. That is catastrophic by any military standard. Yes, Hana agreed calmly. But necessary. If we break through here, the war ends. The enemy will surrender. Sometimes the hardest path is the right one. Dawn arrived with a roar of artillery. The assault began. Velthar watched tactical displays as thousands of human soldiers advanced against heavily fortified positions. The displays showed unit movements, enemy responses, casualty reports. The numbers began climbing immediately. Within the first hour, wounded began arriving. The medical bay transformed into controlled chaos. Humans streamed in with catastrophic injuries. Burns from energy weapons, dismemberment from explosives, shrapnel wounds, chemical exposure. The scale was overwhelming, but the medical team was not alone. Human field medics worked alongside them with terrifying efficiency. Velthar watched as a medic named Jin Seo performed an emergency amputation on the battlefield itself, then immediately moved to the next casualty. There was no hesitation, no panic. Just focused action. Corporal Daewon Kim arrived, wounded again. Severe burns covered his arms. Shrapnel had embedded in his back. He was conscious and helping carry a more critically wounded soldier. You again? Velthar said, immediately beginning treatment. Daewon grinned through obvious pain. Could not let you forget me, Doctor. Besides, someone had to bring Lee back. He took a direct hit. Velthar worked quickly. He had treated Daewon before. He knew human physiology now. The burns were treated, the shrapnel removed. Within 30 minutes, Daewon was stable and asking when he could return to his unit. Private Jae Sung arrived next, his prosthetic arm covered in blood and combat damage. He had been using it to pull wounded soldiers from the battlefield. Korvex inspected the prosthetic and made distressed mechanical sounds. This should have failed hours ago. The damage is extensive. How are you still using it? Jae Sung shrugged with his good arm. I needed it to work, so it worked. Can you patch it up quickly? I need to get back out there. The assault reached a critical point around midday. The enemy defensive line was breaking, but human casualties continued mounting. Sergeant Bo Young coordinated medical evacuations while simultaneously directing fire support. She had been wounded again, a deep laceration across her shoulder, but refused to leave the field. Commander Zethrin fought alongside the humans on the front lines. He later told Velthar what he witnessed. Humans advancing under impossible fire, humans covering wounded squad mates, humans refusing to retreat even when victory seemed impossible. He saw a species that simply would not accept defeat. By afternoon, Dr. Thelnora collapsed. The empath had been sensing human pain and determination for hours, and the emotional overload was too much. Lieutenant Hana found her in a corner of the medical bay, shaking and flickering erratically. How do you stand it? Thelnora asked. How do they stand it? So much pain, so much fear, so much death. How do they keep going? Hana knelt beside her, her voice gentle but firm. Because someone has to. Because if we do not, who will? Because the people we are protecting deserve our sacrifice. That is what makes us human, Dr. Thelnora. We endure because others need us to endure. By evening, the assault succeeded. The enemy defensive perimeter collapsed. White flags appeared across the battlefield. Surrender negotiations began. The war was effectively over. The casualty count was exactly as projected. Devastating in number, but not in spirit. The surviving human soldiers immediately began recovery operations. They searched for wounded. They secured the area. They even provided medical aid to enemy soldiers who hours ago had been trying to kill them. Velthar watched as humans offered water and medical supplies to injured enemy combatants. He saw compassion alongside ferocity. He saw mercy alongside determination. These humans were capable of extreme violence in combat, yet they chose mercy and victory. 3 days after the assault, the medical team gathered in the field hospital. They were exhausted. They had treated hundreds of casualties. They had witnessed the full scope of human capability in combat. Commander Zethrin joined them, his armor still scorched from battle. I have submitted my report to Coalition Command. I have recommended full integration of human forces into all Coalition military operations. Not because humans have the best technology, not because they have superior tactics, but because they are the best soldiers. They are warriors who choose when to fight and when to show mercy. That combination is rare and valuable. Hana nodded. We will do whatever the Coalition needs. That is our commitment. Velthar added his own observation. You are not just good soldiers. You are good people. That is what terrifies and inspires us most. You could conquer. You could dominate. But you choose to protect. You choose to serve. That choice reveals your character. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of memorial service preparations. The humans were honoring their fallen soldiers. Velthar asked permission to attend, and it was granted. The service was held at sunset. Hundreds of soldiers gathered. Names were read. Stories were shared. There were tears and laughter in equal measure. The humans mourned deeply, but they also celebrated the lives of those who died. They remembered not just the sacrifice, but the person. After the formal service ended, the soldiers did not disperse in sorrow. They gathered together, supporting each other. They told more stories about the fallen. They shared memories. They laughed and cried. They processed their grief as a community. Corporal Daewon Kim, now promoted to sergeant, stood beside Velthar during the gathering. His burns were bandaged, but he was healing. Thank you for saving so many of us, Doctor, Daewon said quietly. Your team made the difference between life and death for hundreds of soldiers. You saved yourselves, Velthar replied. We merely helped. Your resilience, your determination, your refusal to give up, that is what saved you. Daewon considered this, then smiled. Then let us call it a team effort. You provided the skill. We provided the stubbornness. Together we won. Velthar returned to his quarters late that night. He began compiling his final report on human resilience and combat medicine. The report would be published across the Coalition. It would become required reading for all medical personnel and military planners. His conclusion read, Humanity's greatest weapon is not their technology, their tactics, or their numbers. It is their refusal to accept defeat. It is their capacity to endure impossible circumstances. It is their unwavering loyalty to one another. They are, in every sense, persistence made manifest. They feel pain like any species, but they choose how to respond to that pain. They experience fear, but they choose courage. They face death, but they choose hope. This combination of traits makes them the most formidable allies and the most dangerous enemies in the known galaxy. We are fortunate they fight with us rather than against us. 3 months later, Dr. Velthar published his complete research. The document became influential throughout Coalition space. Medical protocols were revised. Military strategies were adjusted. Understanding of human capability spread through every level of galactic civilization. But for Velthar, the most important lesson was simpler. He had learned that humanity was defined not by their physical traits or their technology, but by their choices. They chose to endure. They chose to protect. They chose to serve. They chose loyalty over self-preservation. And in making those choices, they revealed what it truly meant to be human. Back at Forward Station Kepler 7, now serving as a permanent medical facility, the recovery ward remained busy. Human casualties still arrived. But now the staff understood. They knew what to expect. They knew how to treat humans effectively. More importantly, they understood that human resilience was not just a biological trait. It was a choice to keep going when stopping would be easier, a choice to help others when helping yourself would be simpler, a choice to hope when despair would be justified. Nurse Rixel summed it up one evening while treating a newly arrived human soldier. The soldier had multiple fractures and was cracking jokes about the situation. Rixel looked at Velthar and said simply, "They are insane."